Welcome to episode 6 of Sports Talk with the Statsman. Hi, folks, I'm Paul Bruno, and I want to thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel at PB the Statsman. On today's episode, I look back at the first weekend of NFL play, and I plan to do so on a weekly review to highlight top fantasy league performances as well as solid efforts by players who are likely available in your free agent pools of available players. If there are key injuries, I'll pick those out too, along with highlighting the most likely replacements in each situation. The fantasy stud of the weekend was Tyreek Hill, who boldly predicted a 2,000-yard season in receiving yards. Well, he's on pace for over 3,600 yards after hauling in 12 of 15 targets for 215 yards and a pair of TDs, the second of which helped the Dolphins beat the Chargers in the shootout in a game that went right down to the wire. No surprise that his quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, led all passers with 466 yards and 3 TDs through the air. On the losing end, Austin Eckler had the second best game among all running backs with 117 yards and a 1 TD on the ground, along with 4 catches and 47 more yards in the air. The most productive running back overall was Packers veteran Aaron Jones, who led Green Bay to a 38-20 win in Chicago with 2 TDs, 1 on the ground along with 41 rushing yards, and 1 in the air along with 87 receiving yards on only 2 receptions. His quarterback, Jordan Love, had an outstanding debut as the new starting quarterback for the Packers with 245 yards and on 15 completions, including 3 TDs, while adding 12 rushing yards on 3 attempts. The top surprise contributor on the ground was Falcons running back Tyler Allgeier with 2 rushing TDs and 75 yards in the ground game, along with 3 catches for 19 yards in the passing game in a 24-10 win over the Panthers. Consensus top fantasy draft choice Justin Jefferson didn't really disappoint, although he ranked 6th on the week among receivers with 150 yards on 9 receptions out of 12 targets, but his Vikings suffered a 20-17 loss to the Buccaneers. He helped Kirk Cousins to the 3rd best quarterback totals of the day, including 33 completions for 344 yards and 2 TDs against 1 interception. The San Francisco 49ers were led to a 30-7 road win in Pittsburgh by Brandon Ayuk, who had 129 yards and 2 TDs while catching all 8 of his targets. Christian McCaffrey added 152 yards and 1 TD on the ground, along with 3 receptions for 17 yards. Jacoby Myers moved over to Las Vegas in the offseason and impressed in his Raiders debut in pacing his team to a 17-16 win over Denver as he hauled in 9 passes for 81 yards and a pair of TDs on 10 targets. Calvin Ridley similarly moved over from Atlanta to make his debut with Jacksonville, and he led his team with 8 catches for 101 yards and a TD grab in a 31-21 win at Carolina. In the Meadowlands, Tony Pollard ran for a pair of TDs and 70 yards, adding 12 more on 2 catches, but the story of the Cowboys' 40-0 drubbing of the division rival Giants was a vicious defense and special teams that accounted for a league-leading 25 fantasy points, including 2 TDs, 7 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a fumble recovery. With a surprising effort in a narrow 25-20 loss to the Eagles, Mac Jones was second among quarterbacks with 35 completions for 316 yards and 3 TD tosses. Of the 3 rookie quarterbacks who made their debut in Week 1, they all lost, by the way. Colts pivot Anthony Richardson had the best stats line. He went 24 for 37 for 223 yards, along with 1 TD pass, along with 1 rushing TD on 40 yards and 10 attempts in a loss against Jacksonville. There were also a few disappointing efforts this week that are notable. In that KC-Detroit game, the defending champs looked out of sorts from the beginning, missing Travis Kelce on offense and Chris Jones on the D-line. The Lions hung around long enough and stole the season opener, in fact, on the road. Chiefs' top wide receiver Kadarius Toney had a lot to do with it, catching only 1 of 5 targets, but 2 of his mishandled pass receiving attempts led directly to 10 points by the opposition. The Chiefs expect to get Kelce back in their lineup in Week 2, by the way, and their fans are clamoring for that. Joe Burrow, the Cincinnati quarterback, is expected to be in the MVP conversations I highlighted in a previous episode, but he and his Bengals mates laid a big egg in Cleveland as they lost 24-3 while he was limited to only 82 passing yards and completing 14 of 31 aerial attempts. In the aforementioned Eagles win, starter tight end Dallas Goedert had 0 fantasy points, failing to catch his only target. Now, before you drop him from your lineup, folks, Philly's head coach has already gone on record noting this stats line. flatly stating that he's not going to allow that to happen again, and that Goddard is a key part of this offense. A major injury took place on the weekend, a torn Achilles to Ravens top running back J.K. Dobbins. That's effectively ended his season. To his fantasy owners, I say, don't look too far for the next man up on Baltimore's depth chart. He made an appearance and was effective. That would be veteran Gus Edwards. He can handle a big workload, and I'm pretty sure the coaching staff want to reduce Lamar Jackson's rushing attempts from the quarterback position to help keep him healthy going forward. If you're looking to upgrade your roster elsewhere, keep an eye on New England wide receiver Kendrick Bourne, who's entering his third season with the Pats, so he knows that system by now, as well as his volatile coach. He hauled in 6 of 11 targets for 64 yards and 2 TDs in week 1. Another place to keep an eye on is what's happening with the Rams depth chart. Cooper Kupp, of course, is going to be sidelined for the first 4 games. Puka Nacua with 10 catches for 119 yards on 15 attempts, and Tutu Atwell with 6 catches for 119 yards on 8 attempts. Both look primed to excel in his absence. Similarly, second-year pro for the Saints, Rashid Shaheed, got off to a great start with 5 catches for 89 yards and a TD reception, along with 11 yards on 2 rushing attempts. At the tight end position, I'm looking at Washington's Logan Thomas with 4 catches for 43 yards on 8 attempts. Patriots' Hunter Henry with 5 catches on 56 yards and 1 TD in 6 targets. If you like a young guy in a good situation, I recommend Cowboys tight end Jake Ferguson, who only caught 2 passes for 11 yards but was targeted 7 times. His veteran quarterback, Dak Prescott, speaks very highly of him, expecting a productive season for the second-year pro. In the ground game, I'd watch what's happening in Philadelphia very closely. Most prognosticators expected Rashad Penny and DeAndre Swift to split most of the carries. However, Penny was inactive, actually a coach's decision, and Swift had only 1 carry for 3 yards and 1 reception for 0 yards. Kenneth Gainwell wound up leading the Eagles running backs with 14 carries for 54 yards and adding 4 catches for 20 yards. Also, Rams second-year pro Kyren Williams far outperformed Cam Akers, a starter in the depth chart for the Rams, with 52 yards on 15 carries, while Akers totaled only 29 yards on 22 attempts in their 30-13 win over Seattle. In the Monday Nighter, it should be a dandy, folks. Aaron Rodgers and his new team, the New York Jets, square off at home against Josh Allen and the division rival Buffalo Bills. I say take the over here, as I expect the 2 quarterbacks to throw the ball all over the yard in this one, leading to lots of scoring. If you like what you heard, please hit the like and subscribe buttons on this screen. It's all free. Thanks for listening. I'll be back in a few days with a look at other top news stories in the sports world on the next episode of Sports Talk with the Statsman.